but that's neither.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Bob may have a question or two, but,
I heard it,
Okay.
and then I walked down the hallway, and I didn't hear the end, because then by the time I came back, they were on a different.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I asked Donna, and she said she didn't know either.
It's green.
You wake up every morning to the sound of construction now, Janet?
Oh my gosh, I know, I noticed that.
oh,
Yeah.
Is that gonna block your solar panels?
No, it shouldn't. It shouldn't, because that roof at that location is angling up, so,
Oh, you had an empty lot next to you, didn't you?
yeah.
Those are my backyard, the people that live behind my house are building.
Yeah, we're good friends with them,
Oh, good.
actually, so that's one good thing.
Janet, do you want that on the screen, or is it not attached to the agenda?
It's not attached, no. So there's one of each that, when you're ready to
Okay.
discuss, we can pass
You
that.
want the ashtray?
That's an ashtray.
Looks like,
Oh, you know what, I think it's the back to the clock.
it says open and close.
Since we finally got the clock to work, I'm hesitant to touch it. It's one that sets off the atomic clock, but then it was in the
Oh.
wrong time, you know,
I know,
daylight savings.
Oh,
that'd be coming up.
thank you.
We'll just do that now.
But these are nice copies.
Hmm?
They're nice copies.
Thank you.
All for me?
I'll do the best for you guys.
Oh, these come from GMB?
It's like, really nice.
I don't know, maybe those are yours.
I kept one, yeah, this didn't go up, do you want this too?
We can
All
share.
right,
No, maybe it is mine.
didn't get attached to the, yeah, you're unmuted, so.
When are you gonna do
That's all.
Yeah.
a better drawing? Remember we had that stick figure?
This may be it.
Well, it's a picture, it's not a drawing.
This may be it.
Everybody ain't scratched down stuff.
And I think those are yours right there.
I think so.
Chip, are these mine?
Yes, sir.
I'm waiting for the atomic clock to click 6 o'clock. My watch says it's 6:02.
So this says 6:01, so.
All right, well, the atomic clock says 6 o'clock. So I think we can commence the meeting. Everybody from the committee is here, all 5 members. Khalil Saliba, our city council liaisons here. Janet Reeves, our staff liaisons here. And also Anne Marie, the town manager, is here.
Slash tech support.
Tech support
Be
today.
scared.
That's better than
Multitasking.
I spent an hour trying to get my wife's laptop to talk to the printer downstairs today. All right, item 1, approval of minutes. Everybody should have gotten the minutes in their package. Questions? Corrections? If everybody's happy, a motion would be appropriate.
Second?
Okay, motion's been approved, been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimously approved. Good, that went quick. Okay, old business, item 1. Janet will come back. She's been working on a status report of all the safety and maintenance items we've previously reported to the city. So we'll just talk among ourselves for a minute until she comes back. I don't know, that way. I don't know, you ran her off. Is she making
She was making a
copies?
copy.
Yeah.
Skip to something else.
Actually, there's nothing we can skip to without more copies or her input until we're down to number 5, so I think we can wait a minute.
Since we have some time, I would like to just, because it kind of deals with the status of the safety maintenance items in progress. This is from the meeting minutes of June 13, 2018.
Okay,
And under that, it says, under number 3, it says, add more sharrows on Savannah Road. it also says, consider placement of new silent policemen in high pedestrian traffic areas
We've been asking for that for years, huh?
from 2018.
Well, and then,
4 years and 4 months.
well, so you all gave specific recommendations on locations for the silent policemen back in, I think 2021. Janet submitted the
I submitted the
permit.
request in the end. Have we started?
Yes.
Oh,
I reported you as present.
oh, okay. So we're talking about the silent policeman. I submitted the application for using the right-of-way at the end of July. They confirmed receipt. I checked with them in September before our September meeting, and it was going to be a couple of weeks. Didn't come in before the September meeting. I sent a follow-up email on November 3rd and got a response that they would have an answer for me tomorrow, November 4th. I sent another email today. So I'm staying on top of it. I just don't know what the delay is,
And
so.
who are you in contact with on that?
Pardon?
That DelDOT?
Yes. Yep, it's there, because it's on Savannah, so it's there right of way. Yeah, so, to be continued, but it did not go unaddressed.
Just, the other thing, as we're talking about Savannah, is that the crosswalks, the traffic section did tell me that they will restripe the crosswalks as part of their maintenance program. They did not give me a time frame. So that's another thing we need to check in with them, because, is that spring of 23, 28, will we live to see it? So, we'll check in with them as well on that.
Any other updates on that? Questions? One thing I might want to bring up on the topic, as we see more, or as we discover more things that need attention, can we set up a system somewhere and maybe look at it next meeting of how we can bring those to Janet or the city or whoever would like them to keep? We need a system to keep new items moving into this system of monitoring the safety items.
I think probably the best way to do it would be to keep track of it on a spreadsheet, because then if some things do get repaired, repainted, we can just update that spreadsheet.
One of the
So
things that
That's probably,
One of the things that we're working on in our internal software system is developing a work order system. So I think
That's right.
ultimately I'd like to get these things in the work order system once we get it up and running. But I think your point, Bob, is more how do you as individuals and as a committee, kind of as you see things, I would say send an email to Janet, and again, we'll start that list and follow up. I know that I keep a list. I get things all the time that might not be bike ped related, but that might be, a pothole here, or, just various street maintenance things, and we pass them on. But if we keep all of the bike ped stuff in a spreadsheet that Janet will maintain, then we can provide clear updates.
I think that's the best way to do it, especially if it's coming from different committee members. Then I just take the email and put it in the spreadsheet, and we keep an ongoing
How are we
Right,
doing on
tracking.
sidewalk repair? How are we doing on sidewalk repair?
So I got last week from GMB, I got kind of the scope of the package that we need to develop, of all of the places where the sidewalks are going to be replaced in the bids that we're getting ready to put out. What I need to do, the charter is very specific about if the city is going to look to the property owners to pay for it, we have to do like an ordinance, and there's all of these steps that we need to do. So we've started to kind of get all of those things together so that we can get that done and be able to get something out to bid over the winter so that when we get into March, our goal is February, March, that we can do our concrete repairs. That area on Savannah Road that you've mentioned, the area in front of the Beacon Motel, that we get complaints about, those are both on it. There's a lot of sidewalk on 4th Street that's part of it because we are about to pave 4th Street, and we want to get the sidewalk done before we pave it.
Janet, do you need an update on requests for things like the Sharrows or stuff, or do you have a current list?
I do have a list that Chip gave me back in the summer. You did a walk around, summer or spring, but if there's something else, you know, if you see something, Glenn, you can certainly send it to me, and I'm, you know, as I put things on the spreadsheet, because I'll take what Chip sent me and put it on the spreadsheet, so.
And what I had, in my maintenance request to DelDOT, I did ask that the Sharrows be reapplied, and that they addressed that, and they said they don't do that. So we're going to have to, when we do put together our package for the spring, we're going to have to put that in our package and then get a permit from DelDOT to be able to do it. But they, even though it's on their road, they said they do not maintain the Sharrows.
So the Sharrow on, the place where I thought a Sharrow was needed was onto the drawbridge. Is that where you're talking about, that they, or is it they who would not do that, who would do that one?
Right, so they said they would not, what I had talked to them was more about repainting or re-stenciling where they had them already, and they don't even do that. So if we want to add more, we will have to develop a plan. I absolutely agree. I think that they're needed right before the drawbridge so that people don't go with the misconception that you're not allowed to be on there on a bike.
Bike on there all the time.
I know, but motorists are sometimes not appreciative. They wave.
So if they don't do it, then what's our recourse then?
Well, they won't do it. What we'll need to do is we will need to put together a package and get prices, and then we'll have to budget for it and do it.
Will that come out of our budget or the?
So I think we will be working on this at the same time that we'll be developing the budget. So what I would say is we can put it in your budget, and that way you have a clear idea of how much money is there. And so we can start to get the quotes now so that we can get it into that. So Janet, we'll talk about that tomorrow.
Okay.
Anything else on this topic? All right, next one down the line, number 2, bike rack update, or also bike parking. That project is being led by Chip with Glenn working with him, so you guys are on.
After the last meeting, we, sometime in that time frame, Glenn and I and Janet and John Robitaille from the building official inspector went back out and looked at the parking spaces, and hopefully we've come up with something that we're going to present, and hopefully we'll present it to mayor and city council if we can get it through this committee right here. So we have a couple things on a slideshow that, if Anne Marie, whenever you're ready, just to show why we want to do what we want to do. This is, as anybody that goes downtown knows that bikes are put just about anywhere and everywhere because there's inadequate bike parking in the downtown area.
That's one of my favorites.
But the only reason they got there because a car wasn't there at the time.
Right.
Because vehicles, and there's the current one that we're hoping to expand on. Again, attached to, there's the historic marker, Mary Vessels Park. And that's just to display what we have right there.
Just a sampling of what the problem is.
Can I, as your, I know that your primary discussion point is really where we put more racks, but I do want to talk to you guys a little bit about some discussion I've had with our parking enforcement, because our parking enforcement officers have observed the same issues. There are times where they are not able to get the money out of the meters because they're blocked. There are times where people have, where, you know, how they put their bikes are interfering with ADA ramps. So there are a lot of concerns. One of the things that we talked about was developing in the code, there's a section about bicycles that pretty much says just about nothing. But well, I'm wrong. It says that if you're over 12, you can't ride bikes on the sidewalk. That's pretty much what it says. What we have talked about was developing an ordinance that would allow the parking enforcement to take some sort of action. Whether that is putting some sort of a lock on the bike where they would have to come to the police department to claim it, and then they'd pay their fine, because it's not like a car where you have a driver's, license plate, or whether it would be something where we would be able to cut the lock and, take it to the police department for people to pick up. We need to kind of figure out the details. I was going to look and see what Newark and some of the other college towns do, because they have a lot of bike activity. But I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on, on the one hand, we don't want to discourage people from biking, but the pictures that you all showed are clearly cause some problems. So hopefully getting more racks will fix the issue, but I'd be interested in your thoughts on enforcement.
Just to go on that, I did talk to Dennis Crawford myself, and he's 100% supportive of expanding the bike parking. But to go along with that, to go with just what you said also, that at some point in some time, there needs to be some type of enforcement. Twila Farrell, we had their window broken at one time for a bike leaning up against it. In front of Nectar, they have the little sidewalk with a sign there that says no bikes, so they're blocking the sidewalk with a sign.
A sign that says no bikes.
In a narrow alleyway, so that becomes a safety hazard there. So this is a proposal to expand the downtown parking area, but at the same time, and direct people to the bike corral, which is underutilized, which we need to do better, make people know that it's there, get the word out that you are not going to be allowed to tie up to light posts or meters or whatever, because it's going to be enforced. So I think doing everything together makes sense. That's my feeling on it.
I think, I'd like to see the enforcement happen at a reasonable time after more racks were installed and signage and education took place, so that folks have an understanding of what the next step would be. I think if we do education, more racks, and enforcement all at the same time, what we're saying is we're not open to riding your bike just anywhere. I think we have to make sure that folks can safely get where they need to get and then do something with their bike, but also send messages. Like on 2nd Street, you have meters, and then you have one of the black bike racks in between those meters. I'm not sure that's the right message that you're sending, because, okay, there's 2 bikes tied up next to that, so I'm just gonna tie it next to this meter. I'm not so sure that intermixing those with meters is sending the right message, because there's no signage to tell you that you shouldn't anywhere. So I do.
And that'll be an interesting challenge as well because of the whole issue of sign clutter. If we have signs everywhere that say, don't chain your bike to the tree, or don't train your bike to meters, you know, we do have.
I'm not suggesting everywhere, but
No.
right now there's 0.
Right, so we will need to be very strategic in how we do it. I mean, right now, there is,
Maybe warnings first, like just hand out
well,
warnings
and,
for
right, and I think that we
2,
would
3 months,
definitely.
and then get people used to, like, you know, as of this date, it will be a
Right.
ticket, not a warning.
Any new enforcement is going to start with warnings. But they do have little, like, hangers that they put on bikes that people, I mean, people don't pay attention.
They end up in the street gutters. or
I
they
would
end
say
up in the
most
trash
people
can.
who chain their bikes to something they're not supposed to know that they're not supposed to. And we do have signs at Mary Vessel's and at the Second Street rack that direct people to the, of course, it doesn't have a, if you don't know our roads, you're not going to know, but, you know, does tell people that bicycle parking is available at Savannah and Gills Neck.
But getting there by bike is dangerous. That's one of the problems with
Well,
that
right.
area. Is like, that's one of the worst intersections in Lewes, and you want
Right.
people to go over there and park their bike and then walk back to Second Street, you know?
A suggestion, if you do like boot the bike, I think there's ways to do it that would like not be so intrusive, that would still send the impact. Just put like a kryptonite lock on somebody's bike and say, if you come here and pay 50 cents, you can have it back, and they probably won't do that again, you know? But I agree that we should wait until, let's see what the situation is after we enhance the bike.
Right, and I agree with that. I'm not proposing that we do it immediately, but I just see eventually at some point in some time that there's going to be some type of enforcement to go along with it. So providing the racks, educating people, getting the word out, requesting, you know, you can do it off through social media, put it in the Cape Gazette, however you want to do it. This is what we're attempting to do. Please, when you come to town, don't, you know, and people know. And as far as finding where I know it's a bad place to go over there to get to that rack, but people can scan the QR codes that are all over town, and it shows where the Gills Neck lot is on there too.
Oh, we should put them on those signs.
Well, you can also, for folks who ride a lot, or, you know, you could make it, whether it's on the bike ped map, whether it's on the city, if the city site, you could do some of the other GIS sites where people could find bike racks. Because you run into people all the time who are like, I don't know where they are. You know, I ran into folks the other day who couldn't find any at Canal Front Park. There is one, but you need to know where it is. So I think you have to help people find their alternatives before you enforce that you can't park here. I just think that's a really tough message to send.
One thing that I think would be relatively inexpensive and not overly obnoxious, you could put a sticker or a small sign this big on every parking meter post. Don't park here. I mean, there's
Right.
all kinds of writing on those things already.
Right,
It's
so
not like
no-
it's going
no
to be
bicycle.
intrusive. And are people going to read it? I kind of doubt it, but it's there if people
Right.
care. And I kind of disagree that, you know, if you got a parking meter post here and a bike rack here, that it's a confusing situation. I don't see that much, but not a few, but stickers on everything other than maybe trees
Right.
might be a first step, and maybe some people will look at it. But I agree, I don't think any of this is going to be particularly useful without enforcement coming along at some period behind it. It's amazing how many times you sit there, you walk into Amy's for a cup of coffee, and there's 2 bikes on the street, and the bike rack across the street is empty.
Right.
So it's not that they don't understand, they obviously don't really care.
I don't see the same thing in Rehoboth when I go to Rehoboth.
Yeah.
I see bikes in the bike racks. I don't see them kind of everywhere.
And I'm going to just estimate that there's probably 50 bike racks, if not more. Rehoboth Avenue,
But yeah,
Baltimore
they've got
Avenue.
'em all
They
up-
are
up,
all
right.
over the place. Now, they're fortunate, they have great bump outs and places for them.
And very wide sidewalks.
Very
and-
wide, but
yeah.
there are, and so, yeah,
Right.
you see them periodically, but not, there are so many bike racks down
Right.
there, and that's what we don't have.
Right, nor do we have the
We don't,
place to
yeah,
really put
the
them.
way we're set up is not conducive to it, I agree 100%.
Well, it comes down to like, you want to give up a parking spot for a car, and do you want bikes there instead? Do you want more bikes in Lewes, or do you want more cars in Lewes? And that's up to the city council, right?
So to further on, then, if, my handwriting and my little sheet that I did here this morning, because I didn't know if we were going to get anything from GMB or not, just shows what we've kind of come up with. Glenn and I talked it over. We have one existing bike rack there now. We'd like to add another existing bike rack and a single-sided bike rack, taking over the one parking spot that's in front of Abraxas's in Josh Barr's little store there. And that's what we need to get proposed to mayor and council.
That's
we
two
like-
spots, right?
There's the bike parking rack there,
Right,
which
that's
is. at-
already there in front of
And there's
Apple, right?
one parking spot there, just one.
Okay,
And we're
that'd be one
proposing
then.
to use
Okay.
that parking spot. We were hoping to get 3 racks, but, full racks, but we just don't think we have enough space to allow people to get in and out. As Glenn and I both looked at it, we remeasured, and to think that, to get 2 full racks and a one-sided rack in that space.
What about some kind of stand-up rack? Like, you know how you can hang your bike in a garage, like stand up? It would take up less width, right?
Well, we've talked about that, but, and some people could use it, John, but there's a lot of people that are not be capable of getting a bike up like that.
And I think with the number of electric bikes as well,
Yep.
that would be difficult.
One question that came up when we
When-
met
yeah.
to scope, when we met with DelDOT to scope the bicycle plan is, they mentioned that this style of bike rack is not, now that you have all of these e-bikes that are very expensive, of course, so are road bikes, that these are not necessarily good for securing those bikes, and that really kind of the inverted U's
Yeah.
or the wave, you know what I'm talking about, that may be a better style of bike rack. I don't know.
Density is the most important thing, as long as you can secure.
Especially this area.
Yeah, so I'm not sure, and also what John was saying, maybe we could do a combination, put an upright in, and then add, if that would increase the density, and some people could use that, and, because that,
18 to 25-year-olds can park like
yeah,
that.
they would label it for young people, no, that might be an option, Chip, to do that. I mean, the more bikes we can put in the area, the better, with ease going in, so we have the spaces large enough so that people can get in between the rows, the way Chip has designed it here, but,
I'm certainly not opposed to that. I just think that the ease factor,
I don't know what the stand-up one, John, do you have an example of that you could say?
No, I just mean that you can get them for your own house. People in the garage, like, will stand the bike up and it just hooks the front wheel.
Oh, but it hooks on a wall usually.
Yeah, well, they have to have a frame then to hold it. you
Right.
know,
There
but-
are different now, rather unique bike racks. Most of them are higher and go, that it would be a challenge depending on how much your bike weighed and in your ability, so, but it might be worthwhile just to see what different kinds of bike racks might be out there. I don't know, it might just be interesting. I think you do have to be careful because you are along a road that's got traffic all the time too, so you do have to make sure that people can just sort of scoot in, put their bike and lock it and get out of the way. Yeah, so I think that's
The aisles here are wide enough, or meant to allow that in between the racks, so I think that's why
Yeah,
we
this
didn't put it
style, I
here.
think, does, that's what I'm saying. I don't know if some of the more new, modern, sort of urban ones made to take up less space, whether that would be as safe there.
Well, if you go to Holland, they have bike parking garages, I mean,
Yeah, multi-story ones. It would seem to me, what you might want to be looking at is what people are going to understand quickly and know about. Not everybody knows these big S-curves are bike racks, and they don't know how to pick a bike up. I've seen, around places I've been, they've got some that essentially it's just pipes come up and then go horizontally about 3 feet in the air, and you pick your front wheel up and put your front wheel behind it, the frame in front of it. How many people would understand that if they didn't see one in place?
well, it could there be a little sign,
I do
a
too.
little sign pole coming up,
I would think with the existing,
like a picture of a bike on it, and like if people would see like a blue, like something blue or red that would stand out,
I would think the existing types we have put in parallel to the one that exists would be pretty intuitive for people. We come in, we drive in, we put our front wheel in it. I'm not sure why an e-bike front wheel couldn't be secured.
Is it about the
rack.
battery?
The frame of it is thicker than the frame of a non-electric bike. And so there's the particular type, like, a lot of people have the loop, locks.
The U-lock.
U-locks.
U-locks.
And that, I think that's what doesn't fit through, but they have them because the electric bikes are more expensive in some
Right.
cases, and those are more,
I mean, this is
Secure.
what Rehoboth has on like every corner.
Yeah, well,
The
full.
people I ride with have e-bikes, and I know they never have problems locking up.
it's the battery they're afraid of losing, and they could lock your
Right.
battery, so.
Okay, is that it there? Yeah.
We just need to, I think we need to understand the specific bike rack to make sure there's enough gap for the front wheels, because they're bikes, right? I mean, what's the next step when we do this, Chip? I mean, we give it to the town and then they pick out the bike racks specific, or?
This is my first endeavor on this, so I'd answer that, I don't know, Glenn. I mean, I personally like that, and that rack is movable. That's not bolted down or anything. So I was thinking if you have 3 of them, and if we were to have a month like January, where we did actually have 3 substantial snows, that they could be moved so a plow can come in and clean out. If you put something in, it's bolted down with U's and everything, that
Good point.
they're gonna pile snow there, I guarantee you, and it'll be there even longer span of time.
This would be more flexible and
No, well,
easier,
that's one of the
less
thoughts that I have, and
expensive, so,
I kind of agree with Bob, that that's pretty plain and simple. Now, if we want to get fancy, that's a whole nother thing. But to me, that's pretty plain and simple. 2 of those that are dual-sided and 1 that's single-sided.
You can look on Amazon, and like a 6-foot one that would fit, they cost like $300 or $400.
Yeah, they're not expensive.
They're not hideously expensive. I don't know what S-turning used and other stuff that has to be dug into the asphalt and the rest of it.
And if we decided to do something different later, these could be moved and used other places, so it wouldn't be a way.
As we add more parking,
Yeah.
so.
It's a good idea. I think it's a nice idea.
Can we tie in bike parking to that Lewes bus that goes around? Like in other words, you put a couple of bike racks in the park, like at Blockhouse Pond or something, and then you can park there and the bus can take you into town?
We certainly could. I mean, we could add bike racks over near where it picks up there.
currently there's no bike racks at George Smith Park. And when people come for the farmer's market, there's bikes all over the place. They chain them to the fence.
Right.
Yeah,
The fence is a good one.
yeah, well,
Maybe we could keep this narrow and
At least the
focused to
meter-
get something
meters
rolling
aren't
and then
blocked.
see how it works out, and then.
The only other thing I would like to bring up is that Janet did give me the one from GMB showing 2nd Street, and it does show the racks that
So-
are faced differently, so we pull in straight.
right.
But I think you can get more. The Second
So-
Street.
Right.
So they oriented the bikes, the bike racks perpendicular to the
To the
sidewalk.
sidewalk.
You mean
Parallel.
I'm sorry,
Parallel.
parallel.
This is in both.
And what we did when we went out was we put them perpendicular. Now,
I think perpendicular works better.
I do too, yeah.
If you put them parallel, people are going to be pulling their bikes back away from the rack, right
Right.
into the line of traffic.
Into the line of traffic and into the
And then
sidewalk.
over the curb, and you have
Right.
one wheel up on a curb.
Yeah.
Not well thought through on that plan.
So I'm prepared to make a proposal that we send this to mayor and city council requesting that we get the parking spot to add additional parking per my hand-drawn sketch here.
Can we, let's do the same drawing for. Next to Rose and Crown, a similar one to.
I want to do this first by itself
Okay.
because we're actually requesting a parking spot to be taken away. I want to do that alone.
Okay.
Or did you
Okay.
motion? I'm just wondering whether I'm seconding. That's all I'm
Oh,
asking.
I am making a motion to send this parking proposal to mayor and city council.
I have a quick question first. Is this sufficient enough detail, or it's just for a
What I,
request? Or
what I think we can do is make sure that we have like a photograph. We'll make sure that it's very clear, whether we have GMB do this version
Yeah.
on an aerial, or whether we kind of show the storefronts and where we're talking about. We'll make sure it's clear.
So
Thank you.
I just got these this afternoon, as you know, and I wrote back to Josh and said, can we reorient the bike racks so that they're perpendicular? And he said that's actually, you get less bikes that way, but
It's safe.
yeah, the way that we showed it here is safer. So I think a compromise of the numbers of bikes that we can get in and the safety of the riders are both priority. So I can ask him if he can reorient this for us.
Can I ask a quick question regarding the other locations you mentioned? Just, perspective, the one next to Rose and Crown. And wasn't there one discussion behind on 3rd Street?
Mary Vessels. Oh,
No, that goes back 2 years.
Yeah, I remember that. Is that an option for the future, or has that been tabled, or?
That was in
Well,
the parking lot, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was in the parking lot, it was
Right.
going to take a spot.
That was gonna take
It
spots
went
too?
up- It went up to, when we proposed that more than 2 years ago, council liaisons then said, okay, well, we're going to need to put signs by Little Walkway by M&T to show people where to get there, okay? And that rack and the signs would have to go to the Lewes Public Art Committee for approval. And somewhere along the line, that disappeared into somewhere. And at one point, the Public Art Committee apparently had looked at it or something, so where
I know
where
what it was.
went-
The Public Art Committee was interested in having somebody design
Design of,
an artistic bike rack.
Right.
That was where
Parking lot behind, okay.
yeah.
And would that take, I don't recall, would it take in 1 or 2 spots? You
I
remember?
think we talked about two.
Two, I believe.
But then when we resurrected it several months ago, that's when, I think, Chip, you said, people aren't going to use it if it's behind the shops on 3rd Street. And
I agree with that wholeheartedly.
was that, am I wrong?
No,
I don't
no,
want to
I-
attribute things to you.
Not like they would in front of, in
Not
front of
when
half
it's
full.
right in front of your face on Second Street, it'll get more use.
I mean, if this is gonna come to mayor and council, I just wanna be able to understand, explain to everybody that these were the other options that
Right.
potentially, the one we're talking about was discussed, and Rose and Crown, there's a spot there that maybe.
And that'll be next, right?
Right.
Right, that's why I want to go ahead and,
Okay.
I made a motion to
So
send this to mayor and city
Chip-
council for here.
Chip has moved that we send this proposal, at least
Got it.
for Second Street for now, to the mayor and council. We've already had discussion before it was seconded. I think we can live with that. How about a second?
Yep.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. We've had a bunch of discussion. Another quick topic of discussion. Before a lot more time and effort by our volunteers gets put into it, if the mayor and council isn't going to be interested in giving up that spot, that's,
Well,
if they, you know, and that's
yeah.
your choice. I'm
well,
not pro or con.
the
but
only,
you
I'm
can
sure the
press on
first
with
question that will
elsewhere.
come up will be,
Yeah.
how much revenue
How
are
much
we
revenue?
losing?
Sure.
Yeah, and,
But that's,
yeah.
we'll be happy to do more research if you guys are in favor of it. Can come up with more details as you wish.
I think you would also, when you consider how much revenue you're losing from the parking meter, you would want to look at the number of additional bikes you can get in for longer term and the revenue that that might bring. So I don't think it's just a loss.
Well, no, I mean, there's definitely going to be a static number, but if you look at it from a dynamic perspective, it fulfills some of our goals of, you know, taking cars off the road, more bike transportation. So it does achieve those goals, you know, whether, from a climate change perspective, you know, there's a
Well,
lot.
and the reality is, people are here on bikes. They're-
Yeah.
Some of them are locals who are seasoned riders. Some of them haven't been on a bike since their last vacation, and they're coming out with the family. So, I mean, we have just a variety, and I think having easy, convenient parking for bikes is going to solve other problems.
Further discussion. Moved and seconded, discussed, all in favor of the motion? Aye. So it's passed unanimously. So we will figure out the details of how to make that move.
Khalil, to go to your question about the one by the Rose and Crown, which is the other photograph that we have,
Yep.
I'm still waiting to get clarification because that is a yellow curb. And the city code, that it stands for no stopping, standing, or parking. The question is, does that apply to bicycles also? And I cannot seem to get a definitive answer on that. Janet and I have talked about it. And
So,
That
so
could be
I,
for emergency vehicles, it is a
I
hotel.
think that it's not a fire lane. I'm not exactly sure why it's no parking.
I talked with Rick and Dennis, and this came about from conversations that they had about that being a safety issue coming up to, so people, that one spot at the end closest to the parking lot behind Rose and Crown is an unloading zone. And before this section was striped, people were pulling into there as a loading zone, and then cars coming up Market towards Second and making the jog across Second tend to pull to the right. And so if there were people there, they couldn't, cars there, they couldn't pull to the right to make that little jog. So that was the impetus for making that whole strip a no parking so that people wouldn't come in and unload. Now, my sense would be that you could probably get, and I think we looked at this when we were out there, at least 2 racks perpendicular to the sidewalk, and you could still have some of the yellow no parking marking, which would provide a bit more safety if we're having bike racks there.
Plus, the bus has to make a turn there, too.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. So, I
So
hope
I-
that's,
So I don't think that, the city painted it yellow because parking's not allowed. So it's not, just because vehicle parking isn't allowed doesn't mean that you can't, the city could not put a bike rack there. There's still sufficient clearance. I think to Janet's point, we want to be careful about getting too close to the intersection because vehicles do kind of start to, they you know, that visual thing, you start to move to the right because you know you're going to have to go to the right to go around Kings.
Otherwise, you're going right through Kings.
Right.
Well, if that's an agreeable spot, then I think that's a perfect place to add more racks. And the biggest part I always thought about this was the people coming from 3rd Street to 2nd Street on Market now have parking where the most of them want to make a right and go the wrong way down 2nd
Right.
Street and
Yep.
help to alleviate some of that problem.
Yep.
And it's,
Would you reposition the bike racks like you did at Hatfield, or would you leave them
he-
how GMB?
personally, I would go perpendicular.
Yeah.
And they might not be able to be 8-foot racks, they might
Right.
have to be 6-foot racks.
That
But-
way, if we went with 2 6-foot racks there, I think that would be a great addition also. Again, it's downtown parking, it's solving a parking issue, and it's hopefully going to curb some of the people from going the wrong way down
That's a
2nd
good
Street.
point.
Do you want to make that a proposal since you're not
Let's
losing
do-
any
Would you
parking?
like to amend your motion to add parking on Market Street?
Well, the only reason I was keeping it separate, because this doesn't take a parking spot where the other one does, and I didn't know if we should keep them separate because of that.
You can do 2 motions, and we can put it as, we can put it as one item on a council agenda and with 2
separate
recommendations.
recommendations.
Okay, I will make a motion then to add 2 6-foot bike racks placed perpendicular on Market Street.
Any further discussion? All in favor? All right, there's,
Bob, I'm done.
good. Nicely done.
Thank you.
All right, next item, map update. Last meeting, we talked about our map situation. We're out of them, we gotta get more. We were looking at 2 options. One is, well, 3 options. Keep going doing exactly what we've been doing, which we kind of figured was pretty pricey. 2, working with another entity, possibly Chamber of Commerce, and come up with a joint map. Or 3, reducing the cost of the maps we print and just continue to print them on our own. On that, I don't think we need to beat to death our existing maps. Everybody knows what they are and what they look like. I spoke to Betsy Reamer at the Chamber of Commerce. She is willing to work with us and come up with a joint map. Haven't gone beyond that pending, hopefully we'll get some kind of a guidance tonight. That would be a joint venture, so there would be a great deal of advertising, referencing. I mean, that's their job. Their job is to serve the businesses, and if they're going to be involved in it, that's what they do. And the other option was to continue printing our own, but possibly cheaper. Janet, you have spent some time and effort on this.
So there was a lot of discussion at the September meeting about the type of map we wanted. And so there was a request to get an estimate on a 2-sided map, basically the same map that we have now, but make it 2-sided and not necessarily the trifold with all of the safety tips in it. So the printer that we have been getting the trifolds from is not the printer or the designer that did the setup of the current map. So I'm working with 2 different businesses on this. What I do have is that on a less expensive stock paper, to do the trifold, the current map that we have, but not all glossy and shiny, would be $670 for 1,500. I'm waiting to hear back from Bruce Churchman, who designed and did the setup of the current map, to see how he can break that out for me into a two-sided, non-folded map, I think similar to what Cape Henlopen uses. So he's been in and out of the studio, and we're playing phone tag. But if the committee wanted to go and you know, have a few more maps, we could get 1,500 for $670 on a cheaper stock. The other thing that I would like the committee to think about is we did the QR codes this year, and so long-term, is there a desire to get away fully from paper maps and use the QR codes and have the map on the city website? I'm just kind of trying to figure out what the direction is so that we can manage, you know, budgets and what we need to, what we want to do, how we want to get that information out there.
I would think, yeah, eventually it would be great if everybody just looks at the QR code and looks at their phone. I don't know that that day is going to come in my lifetime, that people aren't going to want paper maps. I remember last time we were talking about, we were going to check with the tech people about seeing if we can actually track how many people are using the QR code.
Right, and you can, unfortunately, when we did the QR code this year, when it was developed, that feature was not added. So for the QR codes that we have now, we're not going to have any data, unfortunately.
Ever, or
Pardon?
can we change that going forward, or?
Yeah,
What do
I
we
mean, the
pay for?
QR codes were,
Generate new QR codes.
yeah, they were relatively inexpensive. They were, I think, $67.
How much does our existing map cost for 1,500? Do we know?
They're-
It was about, for how many?
1,500, the same amount as the cheaper one?
It was
They were
probably
running
more
about
than double that.
47 cents.
Because these are 44 cents a piece.
You know,
That's,
the ones we were doing were about 47 cents a piece
So, and-
in bulk.
in bulk, 'cause this comes out to
Yeah.
44 cents a piece if you do 1,500, which is a
Yeah.
lot of money for
Yeah.
cheap paper, too, you know?
But it's cheaper than what we're doing now. And we're also talking about a 1,500 map order for the interim to get through until, well, that's a topic that'll come up in our budget discussion coming up, is when we can spend what.
Is there a
On these
volume
maps.
discount? Like, in other words, if you order 3,000? does
Yeah,
that
the
go
more
down?
you order, the
Quantity
less
relief.
expensive it is.
Dan, are you referring to getting them now? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, I think that's what part of the discussion was how can we get through to the next budget cycle, you know, with what we have, using a cheaper stock.
So does the current map that you could reprint for $600 and some dollars on it, from a printer that is currently printing the map just on a different stock?
Right.
Right? Are you tied to that printer in some way? Do they own the image or anything? Someone else could print that same.
But we'd have a setup
But we'd
fee.
have to get we'd have a setup fee.
Right, but that's typically
And
not
so,
a
right.
lot of money. It's like $75 or $100.
Right, and so if we're going to a different design, right, if we're going to a one-side or a two-sided map, not trifold with the safety information, that's a whole another setup fee too.
Right, I was just asking about this map that you
Right.
have here. And can you make any changes to design at the current printer?
No,
Because you're also talking about printing a map that has a message from the former mayor in it. So that doesn't probably make the best sense.
right,
So printing however many you were going
Right.
to print now might not be the best move.
right,
So I think you do have to redesign anyway.
right. That's an excellent point.
Personally, I think that we should joint venture with the Chamber of Commerce and have one map They're all over the town like we are. I mean, if you look at the map that they put out, it shows all the bike racks, restrooms. Doesn't fully show the trails, but that can be easily added to that, I'm sure. And just from an environmental part, to look at the less paper, again, we're doing 10,000 a year. That's a lot of maps that are eventually being discarded.
Yeah, yep.
And I just think to go along with the Chamber of Commerce,
Why don't we just do the Chamber of Commerce and put them in our dispensers, that's all? And then we don't do any maps, let the chamber do the maps. And
Current chamber maps don't have all the bathrooms and bike trails, and they got, numbers and numbers all over them.
I agree, that's the right way to do it. How do we move forward with this then? with
Well,
the
I
Chamber
can
of
go
Commerce?
talk. Now, my opinion, but then again, I tend to have been a navigator for several decades. I would much prefer to have a simple, printed on our own map specifically for bikers and pedestrians. Where are the bathrooms? Where are the bike racks? Where are the bike stores? And put those out. We could experiment with, we've been using 10,000 a year. We could generate the plan, get it going and print it ourselves. The Chamber of Commerce is not going to, my discussion with Betsy Reamer, they're not going to do it all for us. There will be some expense from the city to get the combined map. But that's one person's opinion. I'm out on my bike, I really don't need to know where I can buy shoes, and, there's nothing wrong with that, that's what they do. I see them as, as sort of two separate goals between what's on the piece of paper.
There's another reason to wait now, because if we get more bike racks, you want the new bike racks on the map.
Well, if we know we're going to be installing the bike racks, we can put them on the
Well,
map.
I'm saying, but you have to get the city council to say you can install the bike racks, right?
Right, so that we'll get to the December meeting.
But I don't think haven't decided on what the map looks like anyway.
No, I
The
don't,
map
I
will
don't,
need to be
I think
redesigned.
that's
What I was
for
hoping
this
to get out
committee's
tonight is-
discussion.
So I think
Right.
the idea is to have this new map ready by spring, before
Yeah.
that, so that out it goes.
And I don't know when, I would think we probably have to have something ready to go to the printer, whoever it's going to be, January, February, to get them cranked out by March or April.
Actually,
I don't know, I've never
it's-
printed anything other than
it's
a
quicker
resume
than that.
50 years
it's
ago.
like,
You can
in
get
a
it done
heartbeat. You
in
can
a
get
week,
it-
yeah, you can have something done.
Yeah, you can
Okay.
get it quickly.
So a simple map, a cost of that would be less than probably even the reduced cost, right? You're thinking,
That's, we were hoping to get some estimates of that, of putting together just a map like the state park map I gave to everybody, that kind of thing. All right, it's simple, it's straightforward, it's got a little room for safety information, but there's no advertising. That's my particular preference. That is the direction I can go.
And who would create that mock-up for the map? How do
We
get the
could
map?
draw it up sort of on our own, but then we'd
Well,
have to
I-
come up
I-
with the graphics company that would be
Right,
able to produce
I think
it.
that working with Bruce Churchman, because he did the setup and the design for the current map, and, tell him what, and this is what I was trying to get up with him, because I told him what I was looking for, but he wanted to talk about it, and we just didn't connect, is using what we have on the map and just making it two-sided without
Simplify it,
all of the
yeah.
safety information, which is what I was hearing in
And does that
September.
have the more recent trails on it?
We'd probably have to, we would have to take a hard look at it and make sure that everything is, yeah.
Yeah, the current map, it's got a little inset that shows the
Right.
Rehoboth Loop,
Right,
but it also shows where the Lewes-Georgetown Trail goes and where the Junction Breakwater goes, and it kind of dies at the state park, which is fine.
It has the Gordon's Pond Trail. It actually has the whole
Yeah.
state park.
Yeah, and a little inset
since I-
has
Right,
the
on
loop.
an inset,
But
but
on the
that's,
bigger part, it shows where the trailheads are and
Right.
where they go.
And the map would still be in color?
This is a map.
Yeah, I would think it should be in color.
Because you wanted the different routes are in different colors, right? Like,
Got me, we can
didn't we
figure
have
that
the
out later.
safest route, like the safer routes were in a different color than just,
Well, we could look at all of that. Remember, one point, we took New Road off the recommended bike paths, and took Gill's Neck off the recommended bike paths and some of the older issues of the map.
Right, and New Road's gonna have a bike path again now, so it's probably going to be added back on, right?
Someday.
So we take the current design, simplify it, update it, simplify it to reduce the cost, update it,
On the spot.
and
Update
then,
it,
and then
simplify it.
plan on updating it again in
Didn't you have
another year and a
access
half
to a
when.
Couple of years,
when
whenever
New
we
Road
need to
comes in.
reprint.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
all right, so what is the consensus of, which way do we want to go with the maps?
I would support that, Bob. It's a simplified version, if that's the way we want to go.
Well, that's my thought, but
Yeah.
I'm one of five.
Someone raised to me just now that couldn't you secure some advertising ourselves from downtown restaurants, not a lot, like the chamber would do, to help offset the cost?
Not impossible.
Yeah.
The existing map, we got 2 bike shops. I think they kicked in $200 each.
Okay.
I mean, it's a, you know, a total of $400 is not a major player in what the cost of the maps were.
Right.
It's not impossible.
But like you said, it's not a major, it's not going to, it's going to offset it almost in a negligible way almost.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
especially if we shrink the whole thing.
It still has to fit inside our dispensers, right?
Maybe we could take some of the information that's currently on it and enhance the city's, if the city could have a bike head page, sort of like Rehoboth does, where it has all their information on it, then.
On the website.
On the
or-
website,
Yeah,
yeah, a
That's a
page
good
that you
idea.
could go to, and that way you wouldn't have to put as much information on the map. You could put the QR code on the map, and then
QR code, or
folks could
put,
get all
for
that.
more information, go to
Yeah. and it could be on a
www.lewesbicycle.com or
page
something. It's a good idea.
that the city has.
Yep, that's-
Also would make it easier to find the map.
So that's good, and then what you said, 'cause I think the, having the bike shops, addresses and phone numbers on the map is would be a resource, since that's what, you know, they would need them. So I think if we could at least hit up the 3 bike shops and say, well, put your name on this, you want to kick in money, we can at least ask them.
We can ask them. I
What
would
you
put,
like?
just as a service to the bicyclist who
Yes.
has a flat tire, I think we should put the bike shops on the map.
Right.
Nothing specific other than bike shop here, bike shop here, bike shop here. Something like that, but
But
Maybe the bike shops can buy the map to give out to people in their store. Like, we don't charge them for advertisements, but if they take like 500 maps to give out to people, they give you money for those 500.
Right now, we're giving them to them.
I'm saying, but like-
well, we charge them a penny apiece. We give them 500 for $5.
But I'm saying, like, if you're
Yeah.
gonna charge them money to have their name in there, you
Right.
just say, okay,
A little
here,
bit. That's a
buy some maps
possibility.
at cost, and then give them out to your clients, your customers.
Do you want to hit up a bike store, and I'll do the other, and we'll ask them if would they be, what, are they
Should we
willing
have
to
a map?
pay? or-
My thought, we ought to have something to show them before we ask them to see if they want to be part of it.
Okay.
That would be my thought. Mhm. All right, so where do we want to go from here?
Something to
I
show
can't
these
make a motion.
We want a simplified map that we can show some people and say, do you want to contribute to put your name on this, or would you be willing to buy 1,000 of them? It's a long motion.
Run that by me again. Somebody's got to write that down.
Yeah, I mean, what's the next step?
Well, what's the next step with the maps in general?
Yes.
Do we want to work with other entities? Do we want to try to do it in-house on a simpler basis? Which direction should we take until the next meeting?
The simpler,
Okay, how about if I'll give it a shot?
Thank you.
So motion that we create a map, motion that we revise the existing map, okay, to be simpler and two-sided. I should have thought of that, I need to write. But essentially, it's our map, so we're revising the current map, right, to a simpler format. Does that work?
Works for me.
I second that.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anne
Before Jackie.
Anne
So, yeah,
Marie
we're
is
just-
hiding a smile.
Make
I-
me
I'm thinking poor Janet, but what I anticipate is that you'll reach out to the vendor and then you and Bob can coordinate.
Right.
What
Well,
I envision,
I think we should come up with a list of what we think is important to be on the map before you go to a vendor, so that you know what should be on that map.
if you would send me, Janet, and I suggestions for that, what I think I'll be willing to do that. I will sit and look at the maps we've got now and come up with an idea of what we want to get rid of, what we want to keep, and we need to update bike racks. We need to update, the existing map doesn't show all the bike racks that are in existence, because the existing map was laid out, 4 years ago? So we need to update all that stuff. I'll be willing to take care of that stuff, and then come up with a list. of,
Yeah,
okay,
well, and
this is what we want to have on it.
When Bruce and I can connect, I'll start the conversation with him, and I'm assuming that the one side of the large map that we now have is not going to change too much other than to shrink it down, but we need to make sure that we have all the bike racks on there and all of the trails.
Nobody has water fountains anymore. There's a water supply where you can fill your water bottle, that stuff. Okay, anything else with that? I'll be bothering you some more.
Get in line.
I was gonna say, take a number. Right, Chip?
Right.
Chip comes in every morning bright and early to try and catch me before I'm off and running.
I'm peeking to see you come in.
You should just be glad I don't live across the street. All right, next item. Report on the Lewes Bicycle Master Plan. Something is happening regarding the master
You
plan.
want me to read the email I got from,
I took notes of the email on the agenda, so whatever you.
oh, you have notes?
I do.
Okay, so-
I do.
Go with that then.
So Anne Marie and I met with Del Dot, WRA, and Rossi, which are contractors that Del Dot works with to try and get some scope and some direction for the master plan. So we reached back out to them, and they're currently doing just that, developing the scope, the fee schedule, and then what they'd like to do is they'd actually like to come and hear from the committee thoughts and concerns that the committee has, recommendations that the committee has. And they'd like to kind of have a kickoff in January 2023 so that they can start with data collection and basically program planning, start to hold some public workshops and engage the public as well as this committee. So I think they'll, once they get the scope and whatnot, it sounds like they can be off and running in pretty aggressive timeframe.
Yeah, the email says that they would look to do their first public workshop and survey in May or June. But in advance of that, they would.
They'd be doing the data
They would be doing
collection.
data collection. And they did make note of the months that you meet, so
Yes.
that they can try to coordinate with that. The one sub-consultant, Rossi, is actually the consultant that just did the comp plan review addendum document. So they're very well aware of the level of engagement in the community, so they understand the need to, be in front of the committee regularly and to provide regular updates and to engage the public in a meaningful way.
What's their expertise? Is this what they focus on, bikes or planning? Or
Both are transportation planning and engineering firms.
Oh,
So they do quite a lot. WRA does a lot of bike work, right? I mean,
I'm not,
trying to,
I don't have any experience with them doing bike work. But they
Okay.
do the bike ped portions of the broader transportation
Right.
projects.
And then Rossi has experience with bike. Who did the, trying to think, who did Milford's bike master plan? I can't remember if one of these consultants did.
Well, Panoni did theirs.
Oh,
I might
okay.
be wrong.
I can't,
Yeah.
yeah, I was just trying to think of, but yeah, they all have bike planning experience.
But it might, well, they're based in Milford, maybe that's why I'm thinking it's them. but it might not be.
Yeah, I gotta find out.
You mentioned that they would want to come before the committee, before they get going with public workshops. Would anyone object if we need to call a special meeting simply to meet those folks? Does that work for everybody?
I think it's a great opportunity.
Because then we can concentrate on one thing. It's still what I assume have to be a public meeting. I don't think this committee can go into executive session for anything.
Correct.
Or, well, could, everybody familiar with forming a committee of the whole? in a
It's
public
still a
meeting?
committee. Oh, Century Engineering did the Milford one.
More than 2 people.
No, you can form a committee of the whole. I scared the gentleman out the door, I'm afraid. Night,
Gave up on public.
yeah.
So you're thinking about after their kickoff meeting sometime, or?
No, my impression, just to make sure, that they want to talk to us before they start the public workshops, but somewhere in the vicinity of the kickoff.
Okay.
That's the impression that I got. Anne Marie, was that your impression from the email? Yeah.
Yeah, I would expect they would want to come to you guys in January as they're beginning the data collection.
Before our scheduled meeting, or?
No, I think they could align it with the scheduled
When's
meeting.
our next meeting in January?
24th,
January 24th?
yeah.
Bob, were you thinking before that, or just at the
It
20?
depends on their schedule.
Okay.
And the other thing that came across my mind is, do we, all the meetings have to be public, but do we want to shoehorn them into a meeting filled, in a meeting agenda with a bunch of other stuff on it?
I think a separate meeting would be
I-
great.
I think so,
My-
too.
My inclination.
I think it's a
would be,
great idea.
Let's give them a separate meeting. It may only be an hour or
Right.
45 minutes or whatever,
I'm gonna hold you to that.
somewhere in the vicinity of that. Maybe before, so we know what they're doing, or afterwards to get more info. However those folks would want to handle it more than what our thoughts are. Because they're the professionals. We're the jolly volleys.
So we want to offer to meet with them and before or after the kickoff, whichever would
We'll
make
hold a
sense.
special
for them.
meeting.
And I told them that you may want to do it in a separate meeting because it's,
Yep.
I think it makes a lot of sense that
I think they would appreciate that, too.
Okay, we good on that topic?
Yep.
All right, couple left. Priorities for our calendar year 2023. Last meeting asked everybody to come up with 2 or 3 items that were their priorities, what you think we ought to be doing. What's the most important things we should be doing for the next calendar year? And then we sat down, I got a lot of help from Janet to read everybody's comments and distill them into a handful of top priority items. And everybody got a copy of that, or at least, did you get one, Khalil?
So,
Here, I got some, and they went, come on, fingers. I got one that doesn't work at all. I gotta splint the bloody thing at home all the time. There, you wanna shoot that? And these are just guidance for us. These are what came out as the most common comments from everybody.
Do you have something?
Yeah, it was emailed to you a couple of weeks ago.
I got this, but I printed, but this is what I got.
That was the request. This was an addition,
Want me to make copies?
this was an amendment, or this was an attachment
We might have one.
to an
Yeah,
email.
That makes life easy.
I got a couple.
run a couple off.
Give it to her.
Yeah, you can use this, or,
So Bob, this is what you're doing, right? This thing in the bottom?
no, there was an email
But this is the content, I think.
Got
that was,
I went to his last email, and I got, this is
got
what
a
I have.
there was an attachment.
Here,
This one, because this was done on Word instead of in AOL, this was an attachment
Maybe I missed the
that
attachment.
was attached to
No, I
that
opened the
email.
attachment and said 2 pages, but only 1 page is print. 1 page came up
Now,
blank.
the thing I sent out, well, anyway, Janet will run some copies. This is what flushed out of all your responses is the most common. Yeah,
The safety parking master plan, yeah.
well, yeah, basically.
Yep.
But this was the format.
Yep. Yeah,
All right.
I got it. I just took it out, out
Oh,
of the
okay,
email. and
it's the
put it
same
in.
thing? You just
Yeah,
attached
yeah,
it,
yeah.
attached the attachment to something else.
Yes,
You're confusing me.
sorry. Same stuff you got.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks, Janet.
You're welcome. You have yours?
You got one, didn't you?
I got it.
I CC'd you with all of this stuff.
I did, I looked at it.
I've got it.
Okay, well,
You got
Got it, thank
it
you.
wasn't me. That's- All right, so questions, comments? This is what everybody thought was the, things we've been doing that are the most important to continue. This does not limit us in any way, shape, or form to opening other topics. See,
I think this is just a validation that we kind of continue what we're doing, and this is the
pretty much.
stuff that is important.
We just discussed most of it.
I do have a
well,
question.
for the year. Yeah.
One of the things that was brought up before, and I think we need to figure out exactly where, was the idea of adding bicycle parking over on some of the crossovers at Lewes Beach. We did add an additional rack at the Roosevelt Inlet lot. But if there are other areas where you want bicycle racks,
When you say crossover, what do you mean? What do you mean?
well, where at the end of the streets, and you cross the dune, so on the side streets, there might be locations where bike racks could be added to make biking to the beach easier. Or do we need to look at adding them to the beach lots?
I'd like to tag on to that, Anne Marie, and say that for the bicycle parking, to look at bicycle parking within the city altogether, as far as your city parks, your meeting places, not just downtown.
And I think some of that,
If we-
some of that can be part of the bicycle master plan. I mean, it's not just about getting from point A to B, it's what do you do with your bike when you get there. So I think that a lot of that can be part of that. But I just remember the beach did come up previously.
So I think we could
We
update.
strike,
Yes.
strike the word downtown area, and if I knew how to type, it would have said area, not R.
Our,
In the
And
city,
strike that and say city.
that works.
all over.
Anne Marie, just to go along with that too, I've chatted with Dennis Reardon numerous times, and he has a lot of input about the beach in itself, and he'd be willing to, he said he would go where with me and make suggestions, because he's familiar with the beach.
Well, actually, where his house is right, is one of those areas that has plenty of space.
Right.
Yeah,
West Canal Street too.
the new house there takes access off of that street, which kind of has narrowed the
Okay.
area. It still might be feasible, but there's less area than there
There's
was.
West Canal in particular jumps out at me. There's a lot.
You have knowledge of it too,
Yeah.
Phil, yes, you do. Mhm.
So we do have questions in the thing from Aaron Mushrush, I think.
Can I also ask a question about outreach education that says
Sure,
continue
go ahead.
outreach programs? Could we evaluate outreach programs, or are we just continuing whatever outreach programs exist now?
Evaluate them every meeting. You got a better idea? these are just generalized comments. This is what we're supposed to do, or one thing we have been and need to continue doing. It certainly doesn't limit anything at all. And, okay, we've got
Do you have a
questions.
way of,
I
Yeah.
can't read that from
So
here.
that's a budget item for next year, is doing something about the projectors, because you can't. So you have 3 questions from Aaron Mushrush of the Cape Gazette.
Okay,
One is, DelDOT is hosting a meeting tomorrow on low-stress bike path along Route 1 at Cape Henlopen High School. I think he means the meetings at Cape Henlopen High School. Is a low-stress bike route still feasible in Lewes? I mean, I think that's a lot of what we're looking for, is low stress. So
Well, that was part of that Don's thing about going through Mariners.
that was Don's point.
We
and that-
lost Mariners, so.
well, we
didn't
didn't,
work too
because
well.
that path, that path that we ended up not pursuing the grant for was widened. So that,
Yeah, but to get from 4th Street to that path, the walking path is only a walking path.
right,
So
so,
you have to go in through Pilot Town Village.
right, so Pilot Town Village, that would still qualify as a low-stress bike route.
so the route is there, minus the signs. I mean, that's.
Right.
kinda-
Right, I mean, typically when low-stress bike routes are designated, they're using subdivision streets. It's not all off-road. It's that you're not in places that have a high volume of traffic and high-speed traffic.
That should be part of the master plan then.
And I think it will.
Will be, the data will show what is the level of stress on all of the streets.
Yep.
And as that develops, we can
Yeah.
look at low-stress functions.
So, Erin, I hope that answered. Has the Lewes line has it had a positive impact on biking and pedestrian movement? Can bikers use the Lewes line if they want to take their bike with them? The second part of that, the answer is no. I think we do have bike racks we can put on the front of them. We were working out some of the kinks with the route, and we will be meeting with DART, so it's possible we may have bicycle racks on the front for next year. I do think certainly for pedestrians, it has helped. I don't know if you all
Well,
have
the
thoughts.
statistics came out, they moved, what, 5,000 people on some routes?
Yeah, it was
Six.
6,000 something.
6,000.
Over 6, yeah.
So they're,
And
moved them primarily into town to walk around.
And then cars have license plates to track violators. How is it possible to track violators on bikes? I think that's part of our challenge.
Yeah.
That's,
Right now.
there's no way that I know of to track a bicycle.
We can tag them like wildlife.
You mean shoot them with darts?
Microchip.
I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
Since they're relatively new, regarding the priorities for 2023, has there been any kind of, like, survey or anything, or outreach done to the community asking them what they want, or is that basically just word of mouth, that's why you guys are all here to, be conduits to the community? Just curious.
One of the things we do with the outreach, has there been a survey produced or something like that? No, not that I know of in 4 years with the committee now. One thing we do with outreach, as much as giving out bells, bells are kind of a hook, say, to get people to come talk to you, but we sit out there at these events and we're very much the complaint department hearing, and you got to use some judgment as to what you bring to the committee, what's feasible to bring.
And I would
But a
also
lot of
think
it's
that
just-
people who have a particular priority, this forum here is their opportunity to present it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the citizen engagement in the bicycle master plan will be,
Yeah,
will help
because there'll
to
be
fill
public
that.
hearings and workshops and stuff, right? Just curious.
But to Mary's point before, I think, and yours, I think evaluating, asking, that wouldn't be a bad idea. If there was a vehicle for the town to help us do, like, ask people how, global effort, how do you improve the biking environment in Lewes, that would be interesting to hear the results. But I guess the master plan hopefully, that when they do
Yeah.
their data collection.
That's going to be
they'll do
a
that.
That-
good
right.
vehicle for
I
that.
just got a
Yep.
survey in the mail from Lewes asking about the police department.
Yep.
So you could send out something like that to people and ask them about biking or something.
Or just add a couple questions to the next survey about
It could be
biking.
done, yeah.
Right.
But
So if part of the master plan could involve reprogramming people's brains so they don't like run over people on paths, that would be interesting. So I don't know how that would work.
I think that falls under outreach and education.
Yes.
Khalil, just to piggyback on what Bob said, because, I attended just virtually all of the farmers markets times, and he's correct that it's pretty much a complaint booth, but we always ask, is there anything you want to talk about? I mean, we put it out to them and let them,
Yep.
we don't force feed a subject on them, we see what they
Forgot about that.
present.
Yeah, that's good.
A lot of it's about the trail, Georgetown Trail, that they want parking, because they're not from Lewes. They want easy access parking to the Georgetown Trail in different locations. That's a lot of the complaints I got when I was working the table that day.
A lot of the feedback we get really isn't germane to the city. It's,
Yeah,
where
the
the
trails.
Georgetown Lewis Trail crosses Minos Conaway Road, it's dangerous. There's really
I think we can be
nothing we can deal with that. We
advocates
can,
for getting as much engagement in the master plan.
Is
well,
the scope of the
plan
master,
opens up a whole new world.
is it physical,
From where
or
it's at.
what is the scope of the master plan? Is it just physical stuff, or is it?
I think it's everything.
uh,
I mean, again, they're going to give us the formal scope, but, the way I explained it to them, I said, we've got this great trail network that brings you to Lewes, but then there are gaps when you get here of how you get around on bike when you're here. So I think one thing we want to look for, I think, gaps in the system, safety issues that need to be addressed, bicycle parking, but there could be education and enforcement things that come out with it as well.
Communication
Right,
is, and connections to the outside environment.
right. I mean, I think the Department of Transportation is doing this at our behest. So we asked them if they had funding to do this, so they're doing it for us. So you all will be able to shape what goes in there.
Right, so any other comments on this? I don't know that we need a motion. I don't know that this is law. It's just what everybody thought was important. And as I'm trying to stress, it doesn't mean we can't do other things. And what I was also thinking, I was putting this together, let it bounce off you. Now, this may change knowing we're going to be meeting in January with the master plan people. Do we want to sit down or put some ideas together and then come together as a meeting and say, not only what do we want to do next year, or what's important to us, but do we want to start thinking about longer-term planning for bicycling and pedestrians? I mean, our scope is really rather limited to the city of Lewes. And, we only talk to the mayor and council. We really don't go talk to anybody else. Officially, you read the bylaws. Is that something we'd be interested in putting on an agenda item when the rest of the agenda isn't fun, just to have a long-term planning discussion?
Let me ask a question. What do you mean by we don't talk to anybody else but mayor and city council? Help me understand that.
This committee exists to advise the mayor and council
Oh,
on bicycle issues.
we can talk to other people.
Oh, we can talk to other people, but if we want to have communication with DelDOT, it goes through the city. Or, I don't know, what other entity might be involved, DRBA, if they're going to do something out here. We don't directly engage those groups. The city engages those groups.
I think we should integrate those efforts that you're talking about to make sure that it is in the master, put those efforts into the master plan with DelDOT, and that's the same, I mean,
Yeah.
our long-term strategy, we want that to be reflected in that plan, I think.
Yeah, I agree. As I said, having this master plan meeting coming up now in 2 months, it's just opened up an entirely different world of long-term planning that we didn't know about 2 hours ago.
Because that really is the long-term plan.
Yeah.
And they're gonna
that
help
is
walk us
the
through,
long-term
And
plan.
they're gonna help walk us through that.
3 to 5 and longer
think.
goals within it.
Okay, so on that score, what I'm going to go away from here thinking, make sure I'm not off in another world. The older I get, the more I go to that strange world, somewhere between here and Bermuda, I'm not sure where.
Do you stay there for any length of time?
I'd like to be somewhere in Bermuda.
Not as long as I used to go to Bermuda.
Triangle.
All right, so we're going to, planning purpose, we're going to intend to have a special meeting, basically at the convenience of the master plan people, and we'll come in and deal directly with them. In the interim, we'll all think in our own minds of what we might want to see in that master plan for the long term.
Yes.
That all makes sense? Okay, anything else on this topic? On the priorities?
We do have another question.
No, okay.
It's, the question is there any way to connect the Lewes, Georgetown, and Junction and Breakwater Trail, which I would say.
It is.
I believe they're connected
They are.
by the path at Gills Neck Road. They'll be further connected when the signals operate, or installed and operational at Monroe Avenue as well.
Right, exactly.
It is there.
But
It
yeah,
does
it's
exist.
connected now.
Yes,
If you follow the signs, you go,
yes.
To
So
the
the answer
canal
is
and
yes,
back
it
up.
is connected.
all right, anything else on that topic? All right, we have a budget request to put in by the 28th of November. The email I sent y'all a couple of weeks ago, let's see, it's the one that went out with the attachment, went out on November 4th. In that, I threw out my ideas for a budget request to put together. That was a discussion starter. Everybody went home with homework to come up with their ideas for the next fiscal year 2024 budget. Everybody did their homework?
I have wrote down I got in front of me what you put down, and
That was just, like I said,
that
this
looks
was
like
just,
fine to me. I don't have any reason to change it, so.
Well, the only question I'm going to have for you, Bob, is just under your thoughts,
yeah.
when you have $5,000 for maps, if we go to a reduced version that's going to be much less expensive, and say we only spend $2,500, just throwing a number out,
Yeah.
can we take that other $2,500 out of your budget and put it to somewhere else? Or are we locked into,
Your budget is your budget, so if you put your budget together and you think you're gonna spend $5,000 on maps, and you end up spending $3,000 on maps and say, you know what? I think we should buy some bike racks with this other money, you can do that. You've got, I did check the financial report, and you've got, let me just make sure I get the number right. You've got about $4,800 left in this fiscal year. So if there are things that you want to do with that money this fiscal year,
is that use it or lose it?
yep, at
And when is the fiscal year ended?
March 31st.
In March.
That would be the spring maps then.
It
Yeah,
could,
there's
it
a lot
could
of
be
things we
spring
can do.
maps,
This
it
is-
could be, I mean, if we want to use some for bike racks.
Are we paying? I
So,
didn't think we were paying.
Well,
Yeah, could we
that's going to come up in the budget discussion, all right?
Oh, sorry.
Might as well address it now. Like the projects, okay, Sharrows, well, that's DelDOT stuff. We'll just use the bike racks. Who's going to pay for the bike racks? Should it come out of the committee's budget or somewhere else in the city's budget?
So I would say they
that's
should be budgeted, if you know there are bike racks that you want to install, they should be budgeted in your budget.
Okay.
If you're like in the middle of a fiscal year and, you know, you don't have any money, but we decided that, you know, we really need a bike rack at such and such location, we'll look for money in the budget. But in order to build it into the budget to make sure that there's money available, it's best to put it in your budget.
Can we get grants to pay for that and use the money for something else if we were able to?
I mean, once the money's in the budget, the money's in the budget, but what we look for is to build a budget that reflects your needs. So, I mean, if you say we want bike racks and we're gonna get grant money, then we wouldn't budget for it.
But you don't know that you're going to get the grant money. My
Right.
question is, if this year, if for 2023, we were budgeted with $8,540, and that was hypothetically the next year's budget, and we were able, in the course of the year, to get that money, to get those things done for less money for whatever reason, whether it was grant money, whether it was we were able to find sponsorships for the maps for other things. Are you saying then that we don't can we not use the
No,
rest of that money?
the money that is budgeted for the committee is available to the committee for the fiscal year.
Okay.
Okay.
But
so
we have
as
to have
long as
prices
we-
to come up with a budget, then we need the price of the racks.
So we
and what
should
the racks
price-
Right, but we can, if we know what the things are that you want to do, we can get the pricing.
do the research on it.
And there's also, now you build the installation to us, like there's the city workers who install the racks, does that get charged to our budget?
Anything that's done by city staff does not. Even like what
So
we've
the
had
labor
GMB
charge- There's no
do.
labor charges for city staff then?
Right. I know in the
But someone's
past,
gotta pay them, right? I mean, you pay them.
but they're
somewhere.
paid anyway. I mean, they're already in the budget and in the
So we should
salary
make a
lines.
a request, a budget request for some racks, and we could buy some in the interim if we needed, in the spring before next March, if we needed to, since we have some money left over in our budget. is what I'm
Right,
hearing,
but you need maps, and you also need permission from the city council to install the bike
Right.
racks. So you can't buy the bike racks until you know you're gonna get permission to
Right.
install the bike rack.
Right, but we'll have that in December, and funds are available till March, so.
So
Okay, so,
we made a formal request for bike rack cost?
Yeah. we just
Passed.
did.
You voted on it.
this is information that's been conflicting based on the source as to where the budget should go and whether we put something up like the bike racks now, which we didn't have in our fiscal 2023 budget. Now, we happen to have money left over.
But
If
there
we
weren't,
didn't,
there weren't specific areas where you were looking to install bike racks.
yeah, I know, Mary?
But if I'm running off of memory, we had a similar conversation at our September meeting,
Yeah?
and the answer was no, the bike racks would not come out of our budget, they would
That's
come out of the city budget.
city's
They would
budget.
not come out of our
Okay,
budget.
That- now,
let's,
this is where
hold
I'm
on,
saying-
let's back up a minute. It's all the city budget.
Right.
No,
We
no,
asked
but,
about the bike
but what,
budget.
we don't have money set aside for bike racks somewhere in the budget. So we would, if, the question came up in September about would the bike racks come out of your budget? And I think it was more that if there was not money in your budget for it, we will find the money to pay for the bike racks. But as you submit your budget request, we want you to think about the things that you all want to do that will have a cost to them. Because otherwise, we're looking in other pots of money that are really kind of there for other things.
What about the
So-
silent policeman? Is that gonna cost us money?
The silent,
Different
the
strategy
silent,
for this
the silent policemen have previously come out of the committee's budget. But again, I have funds in the budget for street signs. So if there's not money in the committee's budget to pay for it, we can pay for it out of a street sign budget. The idea is when you're building your budget, we want you to be realistic about what you think the
Right, but I
expenses are
don't know
going
the
to be.
cost of the silent policeman. In other words, the ones we had originally are older, they've been
I suspect that they probably all need to be
Yeah,
replaced.
I think they do.
And what do they cost? Do we know?
I mean, again.
We just have to look it
If
up.
we know what you are looking to budget for, we will get the prices for it and build it into the budget.
See, it's a difficult budget, because the idea is either we come up with things and find prices and add it up, and that's our budget, or you say, here's $20,000, and we decide how to spend the $20,000. You know what I mean? Like, it's,
Right, but, I mean, typically, you know, and I think you would agree, Khalil, that this next budget's gonna be a difficult budget.
Right.
We have a number of our revenue sources that have either plateaued or in some cases are declining. This year, we have had to put off capital projects because our transfer taxes are not coming in because of obvious reasons in the economy, and our investments have lost money, and we don't want to pull money from the investments when we're at a loss. So, you know, we're going to have a tighter budget than we have in the past. So I think to the degree, yes, you can say we'd like a budget of $20,000, but when it comes down to, you know, what are the needs, it's good to have something to back that up. So what we're trying to do is get all of the committees to think about those things that you plan to do in the coming year that will cost money. And, you know, again, it doesn't really matter from a city finance perspective whether I budget bike racks in the maintenance department or in your budget. One way or another, I have to budget for bike racks. I think it's more transparent if I'm building a budget to budget it under the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, because it's something that is a function of the committee. If I put it in the maintenance department budget, they could have a big expense that comes up, and, you know, there goes that money. So what I try to say to committees is, if there's something that comes up during a year and the funds aren't in your budget, don't let that hold you back from making a request. We can usually find money, and you know, like with bike ped stuff, usually there's money in municipal street aid, but you know, we've been working to try to continue to spend that, and we're using some more of that for capital projects. But again, usually we can find the money, so I don't want people to say, well, we can't do that because it's not in the budget. But as we're building the budget, I think it's important to anticipate what you are going to be doing that's going to cost money.
all we know is how many bike racks
Well,
and how many silent policemen we need, right?
how many things that we talked about tonight should we be asking for, like sharrows and there's a number?
So the sharrows,
Yeah.
so, the crosswalk stuff, I'm gonna work with the maintenance department to build into the maintenance, you know, making sure that the crosswalks are striped. I think we can do the same thing with sharrows, because that is really a road maintenance function.
Sorry, Mary.
No, whenever you're done.
Mary.
I'm struggling with how we're supposed to create a budget when we really don't know what our strategies are for April 1st, 2023 through March 31st, 2024, right now. And that's where I mean, we're talking about doing a map, yes, but we really don't have a lot of strategies for that year. We know we want 2 bike racks now, but this is November of 2022. There's a master plan that's going to be developed next year, and however many months that will take. That will pull out priorities that we may be recommending, and there would still be 7 months left in that fiscal year, so.
Oh, there won't
I'm
be
just-
7 months. I mean, if the,
bear with me, what-
I mean, they're not gonna be anywhere near, it'll be the end of the year before they're done.
I'm just saying, in my experience from a budget prep standpoint, I'm having a hard time because I don't think we know enough about what our strategies are for the next year.
But to Glenn's point, there are a number of things that you have talked about tonight that have a cost to them. And I think if you say, we want X number of bike racks, these are the locations we're looking at, but we know that we're gonna wanna put 3 more bike racks on the beach, we can start getting that money together, or, start getting those costs together. It's not you're never going to anticipate all of the potential expenses, nor can any of our department managers. But we have to do this to build the budget, otherwise we're just pulling numbers out of the dark, which we can't do.
What I'm saying too is that we don't have the costs for these things.
Right, but if you say this is what
yeah.
if you say, I don't want from you necessarily, we need $3,422 next fiscal year. I want, we need bike racks, we need maps, make sure you budget for sharrows, and with that, Janet and I can work on
Building those
building
estimates.
cost estimates.
So we just give you quantities.
Right, if we know what you want to do, we will start to build those out and then put something in the budget. Short of that, you'll get, what I would say is, we'll budget what you have this year, and if it's enough, it's enough. If it's not enough, it's not,
Yeah, what I was gonna say is for fiscal year 2024.
right.
All right. I would think, hopefully, if mayor and council do the bike rack thing, they'll be installed before the beginning of the fiscal year. And
I
that
would
not
agree.
be in next year's budget.
Right.
Beach racks for next year.
Beach racks for next year. Now, we haven't even thought or talked about that. We haven't done any long-term looking at that.
Right, but if you
if-
know that there's going to be something, you can, come up with a number of, we're probably going to want this type of bike rack and 4 of them, or, and we can start to put costs together. We're not going to get a precise, I mean, a lot of things change from the time, and this happens with every department. A lot of things change from the time they submit their budget to the time they're actually spending the money. And there are plenty of times where a need will come up and we'll say, well, then this thing that we budgeted for, we won't do, but we're going to do this instead.
And the master plan will change things too, because that will give us
Right.
some direction, the master plan.
Right, but I
yeah,
expect that the master plan, we're probably a year from when that's done, so you're going to have about
Budgeting
3 or
for
4 months in the
2025.
fiscal year
Yeah.
with that plan complete.
And we knew what bells and
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you want more bells and helmets,
was-
that's another thing. If you want to do more bells, if you want to do more helmets, I think those are all things that we can make sure that we get prices for and build into the budget.
And can we put $1,000 more in it because I think we need to evaluate and hopefully not just do bells and helmets and do more outreach and education. And
So you can budget for outreach materials. You can say, we need X amount of money for outreach materials.
Okay. Because our little cubby holes that I'm looking at, none of these 8 items are very specific to.
Right, right,
Okay.
not at all.
But the
Yeah.
details are in the justification materials, the backup
Right.
materials. And that's where, like, when I do the Parks and Rec budget, and each commissioner sends me a budget, and if there's not an estimate, either they get it or I get it, it's usually me. And if there are big projects that need to be done, I get the estimates for that. But that all goes in their line item, and it's not broken out, and it's not that specific. But when I go to a budget hearing, I have to justify that amount to mayor and council by the backup information that I
Right,
have.
so
And are
Janet,
those Parks and Rec folks that are submitting, are they including bike racks and other things when they're talking about how to improve their parks? Or are they looking at this committee to consider what takes place within those parks?
Actually, it hasn't been a discussion. They're usually looking at pathways in the park, playground equipment in the park, tree care in the park, plantings, that sort of thing, lighting in the parks. I'm just thinking of last year's budget. Repair to gazebos and pavilions, landscaping, that sort of thing. There is, to a degree, certainly some overlap between the commission and this committee. So, I mean, you know, certainly we just had a conversation that there's no bike racks
At George H.P. Smith Park.
Right.
And
So one would
bikes
think
get
they'd be in the
guy-
Parks and Rec budget for that park.
You know, and again, a lot of times things get budgeted where the request is. So if the park commissioners haven't asked for it, they're not going to build it into their budget.
Right.
And we're not looking at budgets that have, you know, enterprise funds where you can't commingle money. So, I mean, really, all the revenues support all of the general fund expenses. So it's really, as the committee, your budget should support your priorities. The park commissioners will build budgets to support their priorities. If they did say, oh yeah, we want some bike racks, we would certainly do that in their budget.
So I'm hearing we should
And
take a
I'm
more-
just asking, I'm new to this committee, so I don't know how we do the budget every year, so that's why I'm asking.
Put it this way, Chip and I are finishing our 4th year on this committee, and 2 months ago was the first time we knew we were going to have anything to do with the input into the budget.
So I think
So
we're all
we're-
on this steep learning curve.
Yeah,
of
please
how-
understand, and
Right.
we're virgins at this stuff.
Right, no,
Trying to
and
figure
I
out how this
think,
whole budget works.
you know, and I don't
who
think the
did it
budget should,
before.
I don't think it should be an intimidating thing.
Right.
I think it's more just, you know, you've set priorities. Some of those priorities will cost money to implement. So if we know what to track down expenses or the costs for, it helps us to build the budget in a way that's realistic, and that when we're, you know, getting out the scalpel and trimming, we can say, oh, well, no, we don't want to cut this line item because, you know, this is specific for bike racks, and, or this is a bike safety issue, you know.
Now, will the bike racks come out of the previous budget, or are we going to put them off till the new budget?
What I would say is, if council approves the bike racks on Second Street, there is sufficient money in the current fiscal year budget that we could do that. And if you want to purchase maps, still probably purchase maps. I mean, you're not even, you've got
And do maps
$4,800.
fall under outreach and education on our priorities, because MAPS is not on our priorities.
Yeah,
So
that
we're
would,
budgeting to the priorities.
if we're going to budget to that list we put together. But
I would
I
include
think-
maps under outreach and education.
We're not,
Oh, okay. well,
You said you would, right?
I mean, it doesn't, okay, should we add another category?
no, I
No, for
couldn't
budgeting.
understand what you said.
I would.
Oh, yes.
I would, yes, yeah.
So if we buy the bike racks out of this budget now, the old budget, for Second Street and Market Street, 4 racks, we don't know how many racks we're going to need in the 24-25 budget,
So let's make a guess.
23-24.
Right, so estimate.
6.
I mean, what would be your,
The parks and the beach, I'm looking, I think we should look.
3 on the beach, 2 in the parks.
Yeah.
5 times 4, $2,000.
I mean, yeah, I mean,
I mean, it's,
just,
And the silent policeman, will that be under this budget, or that would be the previous?
it could be, well, depending on when we get the permit.
Right.
I mean, but again, if we purchase the bike racks out of this budget, and it gets your number to where we can't afford the silent policeman out of this budget, we'll pull it out of another budget. We'll find the money, you know,
for fiscal year 2023.
right.
Of course, we have, 13 days before the budget request has to be in for fiscal 2024? 28th?
Again, if you, and that's not,
Amendable.
it's not a drop dead. Now, it can't wait until your next meeting, because we have to deliver the draft budget to mayor and council by February 1st. So by your next meeting, it's pretty locked in.
I'd like to add a line item for bike racks in this budget, and that would be my request, Bob.
For the 2020, fiscal 2024.
Yes. And six bike racks that we need to figure out where they beach and
Maps,
I can get
Maps,
that.
if we took
bells,
this,
have maps.
this is not a budget, this was a discussion starter.
Oh, okay, got it.
Okay, that's the reason it was emailed, just to kick off a discussion. I think we did that. We got
So we've got 6 bike racks, we've got maps. I mean, did you want to do helmets, bells? Did you want to do more outreach materials?
Could that just get tossed into what was written here as miscellaneous, put all that as
Oh, it all
outreach
goes,
material?
we will put most of your stuff in miscellaneous. And then we have like clerical, and that's to pay for the minutes.
Yeah. Was that technical equipment or
Right,
something? I
so-
was trying to
so
come
I
up
think-
with something that vaguely followed these
I
numbers, but I finally said no.
Yeah, I mean, I think that where am I?
buy the helmets.
Supplies, the supplies, office stuff, I got it right here.
Okay.
That's budgeted at 4,050. I think that's the maps. I think that's where we've put
Yep.
the maps, and then
Okay.
everything else we've put under miscellaneous.
Pardon my ignorance, what's a PG supply?
Products and goods.
Okay.
So we have.
Stuff.
We have, PG is stuff,
Yeah,
CS is contractual services,
all right,
and CO is capital outlay.
all right.
So there's our.
Can you take what, assuming everybody's reasonably happy with this, can you guys take and make a budget out of this?
I think we
That looks
can.
like this
Yes.
thing? that-
Yes. Yeah, and we don't expect you to give us the numbers and give it to us in this form. Nobody does. No. You know.
Good.
Add on 8% for inflation.
Yeah. Well, that's why I said these can be placed, if I could type, this would say placed, not places. These can be placed in whatever budget account is appropriate.
Yeah, and
Okay.
again, with the committees, it tends to be a lot miscellaneous because,
Everybody happy with that?
Yes.
Somebody want to move something besides my butt to my car?
I'm moving close.
We gotta get the budget done.
Oh. Well, we just said, we just.
I think you've
gave
given us,
it.
I don't think you need a motion.
Okay,
I think
done
you've given
then.
us direction.
All right, otherwise on here, new business. Anybody got anything else they want to throw up? Okay, John made a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
24th of January is the next scheduled meeting.
Happy Thanksgiving, all.
Yes.
To stand by for a special meeting.
January?
Yeah.
I thought this was going to be a quick meeting. No, we're going to move it longer first.
No.
It's like you can't break that 2 hour.
And we didn't have anybody from the public.
I know. When that guy left, I was
Thank you, Janet.
like, oh, man,
Thank you.
he left.
Take care. Good Thanksgiving.
You too, take it easy.
One day for you.
Long week. Last night was a council night, so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Quick question for you.
Yes.
Our bylaws say the chairman is the
Good Thanksgiving, Bob.
mayor and council. If you-
Okay,
Have a good Christmas, too.
okay.
Yeah.
Can I delegate
Oh,
For Christmas.
Chip
yes,
and
yes.
handle their,
Yes, you can.
can I be in the peanut gallery?
You
Or would
absolutely
that
can.
constitute a FOIA violation?
No, public meetings are public meetings. You can be here.
Let's go.
Chip,
So it should be the chairman or his designee.
I am hereby